When my best friend Mia asked, "So how was the retreat?" She had no idea what kind of landmine she'd just stepped on. I blinked, pretending not to understand. "What retreat?" I said, lightly swirling my wine like it might answer for me. She laughed confused, then pulled out her phone. "Your sister posted about it, looked amazing, matching shirts and everything." And there it was on her screen, a photo taken from a drone, the caption reading 2025 Annual Family Retreat. 118 people stood smiling in front of a sprawling lakeside resort, my parents, my 6 siblings, their spouses, their kids, cousins, and even a few friends of friends. Everyone except me. I felt my stomach drop. "Oh," I said, forcing a laugh. "Yeah, I wasn't there." I didn't bother explaining. What could I even say? That my mom had told me a few weeks earlier there wasn't enough space for everyone this year. That she'd said it so casually, I didn't think twice. That I'd believed her. Because that's what quiet middle kids do. They don't push. They just step aside. I excused myself to the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, and opened Instagram. The evidence was everywhere. Brunches by the lake, campfires matching sundresses, even my parents slow dancing under string lights. Someone had coordinated this. There were name tags. There was a color scheme. And there was a banner that might as well have read, "Everyone welcome, except Clara." It wasn't the first time. I'd been left out before birthday parties, weekends at the lake, family photos where someone would joke, "Oops, we forgot Clara again." It had become a tradition I never consented to. Still, I'd always believed maybe next time would be different. Maybe this time I'd finally belong. Tears came without warning, quiet, controlled, like they were embarrassed to be seen. I wiped them quickly, fixed my makeup, and stepped back out as if nothing had happened. I smiled, I nodded, I laughed at stories I wasn't listening to. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever did. That night, though, something in me shifted. I was done being invisible. I didn't know it yet, but within 24 hours I'd do something that would change everything. Growing up as child number 4 of 7 means existing in a strange middle ground, half forgotten, half convenient. My family was loud and musical, the kind that broke into harmonies over dinner. 2 of my siblings even made careers in music. I unfortunately was tone deaf. When I was 7, I joined in singing Happy Birthday, and my sister winced. "Clara, please," she said, "you're flattening everything." The room laughed, and that became my role, the off-key one, the punchline. They even coined a term, a Clara joke. It meant a joke that wasn't funny. Even when I wasn't around, they used it. That's such a Clara joke, they'd groan and everyone would laugh again. One day I asked my mom if she thought I was funny. She smiled gently. "You're clever, sweetie, but not entertaining." I stopped trying after that. I learned to be quiet, helpful, pleasant, invisible. Years later, I started writing down things that made me laugh, awkward stories, little observations. Eventually, I tried performing them at a local open mic. It was terrifying. But when the crowd actually laughed, real laughter, warm and surprised, I felt something I'd never felt before. Seen, heard, enough. I didn't tell my family at first. When I finally did, we were sitting around after dinner and I said, "I've been doing stand-up." They all stared. My brothers snorted. "You on stage." My mom smiled like she was humoring a toddler. "That's adorable," she said. "It's good to have hobbies." I invited them to a show anyway. I got there early, saved seats, and kept glancing at the door. They never came. Not one of them. I crushed that set, got a standing ovation even, but all I could see was the empty chair I'd saved for my mom. After that, I stopped inviting them, not out of anger, out of self-defense. So when I saw the retreat photo, the no space for everyone lie, the 118 people smiling without me, it wasn't just exclusion. It was confirmation. I'd always been the family joke, the mistake, the afterthought. That night, I opened my laptop and started typing. I didn't plan it. I just needed to say something. I had a show the next evening, and instead of my usual material, I told a story. Most comedians I began get into stand-up because their families laughed at their jokes. I got into it because mine didn't. The audience laughed immediately, so I went on. I told them about the Clara joke about being tone deaf in a house full of musicians, about how my parents said there wasn't enough space for me before inviting over 100 people. The laughter turned to gasps, then applause. When I walked off stage that night, people were cheering, but inside I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter, like I'd just ripped off a bandage that had been glued to my skin for years. It stung, but I could finally breathe. The next morning at 7:03 a.m., my phone rang. It was my mother. She didn't even say hello. The moment I picked up, she launched straight into shouting. "How dare you?" she hissed. "Someone saw your little show. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for us?" I sat up groggy but strangely calm. "It was a 10-minute set," I said quietly. "I didn't name anyone." "You didn't have to," she snapped. "Everyone knows who we are. Your siblings have reputations. Clara, do you enjoy dragging us through the mud just because you didn't get your way?" "You mean because I wasn't invited?" I asked, voice flat. "Or are we still pretending that didn't happen?" Silence, the kind that cuts more than yelling ever could. She exhaled sharply. "Do you know what your brother said? He could lose gigs because of you. And your sister is mortified. People are calling her fake online." "So, you're saying people believed me?" I asked. Another pause, then a cold clipped I see before she hung up. I stared at my screen, feeling nothing at all. Not anger, not sadness, just clarity. They weren't upset about what I said. They were upset that I said it out loud. By noon, the group chats were on fire. My sister sent a 3-page essay about how she'd always supported me, which was ironic considering she once told an ex I was too emotionally flat to be funny. My brother sent a voice note accusing me of weaponizing family trauma for attention. A cousin said she was sure it was just a misunderstanding. One aunt texted she was praying for me. Another said I'd broken my mother's heart. Not a single one asked how I was doing. I could have tried to explain that my story wasn't about revenge. It was about finally being honest. But they weren't looking for understanding. They were looking for silence. The same silence they'd trained me to live in since I was 7 years old. That night I made a video. No stage, no jokes, just me sitting on my couch in a hoodie holding a mug I wasn't drinking from. "Hi," I said to the camera. "So I guess some of you saw my last set and apparently it upset some people." I paused. "Here's the thing. If your family tells you for 20 years that your jokes aren't funny, and then one night hundreds of strangers laugh until they cry, you're allowed to talk about it. You're allowed to heal however you need to." I stared into the lens. Also, I added, if you throw a 118-person retreat and say there's no space for your daughter, maybe don't act shocked when she mentions it on stage. I posted it just after midnight, closed my laptop, sat in the dark. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself for their reaction. By noon, the video had 300,000 views. By 6:00 p.m., I was trending under Clara Said. By the next morning, it had over 500,000 views. When I opened my door to grab coffee, they were there, my parents and my brother standing on my porch like an intervention gone wrong. "You need to take it down," my dad said without preamble. His face was red. My mom's lips were pressed so tight they'd nearly disappeared. My brother, arms folded, looked like a bouncer at a club no one wanted to enter. "You've humiliated this family," my mother said, trembling. "You made us a joke." "I didn't make you a joke," I replied evenly. "You did. I just turned it into a punchline." Chad, because of course his name is Chad, took a step forward. "You can't just post things like that without consequences. It's defamatory." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't seem this worried when I invited you to my shows, and none of you showed up. Now suddenly, you're all my biggest fans." "We came here to reason with you," my dad said stiffly, glancing toward the neighbor's yard. "Can we come in?" "No," I said simply, "and just a heads up, if you start yelling, I'll film you and post it." They froze. "You're threatening your own family," my mom gasped. "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting myself from the same people who excluded me from a retreat with 118 guests and then acted like I didn't exist." Chad muttered something under his breath and I raised my phone. They all backed away like I'd drawn a weapon. "Bye now," I said and closed the door. Through the peephole, I watched them stand there for a few seconds longer. My mom shaking my dad, staring at the ground, Chad seething. Then they left. 3 days later, I got an email titled Urgent Family Concern. It was a cease and desist letter from Chad, alleging deformation of character, spelled exactly like that. I laughed so hard I cried. Then I made another video. I didn't name him. I didn't show the document. I just read a fictional letter aloud with dramatic music playing underneath. Apparently, I said pointing out that you weren't invited to your own family's retreat is now a federal crime. Somewhere the First Amendment is weeping. By the next morning, that video hit 900,000 views. 3 podcast hosts had emailed me. And Chad, he'd just become the internet's favorite unintentional meme. The fallout was instant and brutal. My family's group chat exploded again, paragraphs of outrage, half-hearted defenses, and long messages that all sounded like public statements instead of genuine emotion. My sister accused me of mocking the family's pain. My mom sent one-line texts. "You've gone too far. We're the laughingstock of the community. I hope you're proud of yourself." But I wasn't proud. Not really. I wasn't gloating or celebrating. I just felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being the disappointment. The silence that used to feel like punishment now felt like peace. Meanwhile, the internet had a field day. YouTubers and TikTokers dissected my story frame by frame, speculating about which sibling was which, finding screenshots tracing old photos. Someone even found the resort's location from my sister's post and connected the dots. The hashtag #HadFamilyRetreat1N8 started trending. Overnight, my parents' curated image of the perfect talented family shattered. The irony. The same siblings who accused me of craving attention started doing interviews. Podcasts titled "Let's Talk About It" and "Raw and Real" suddenly featured my brothers and sisters talking about family values and the dangers of cancel culture. They never used my name, but when my brother said some people just thrive on playing the victim, it wasn't exactly hard to figure out who he meant. My audience, though, saw through it. People flooded my comment section with messages like, "This happened to me too, and thank you for saying what I never could." One woman wrote, "I thought I was the only one my family made invisible." That comment alone made all the noise worth it. But things kept escalating offline. My parents' neighbors started whispering. Local tabloids picked up the story. 2 weeks later, my parents sold their house. Officially, it was downsizing. But we both knew better. They were running from the shame of being the butt of my punchline. I didn't post about it. I didn't taunt them. I just quietly moved on. Instead of more family drama, I started uploading sketches and stories about belonging, identity, and self-worth. People called them funny, but real. I'd talk about things like growing up unseen, about trying to earn love through perfection, about realizing that sometimes being alone is healthier than begging to be included. Each video reached hundreds of thousands of views, and for the first time, I had a community that actually listened. I started performing again too, this time to sold-out shows. I'd open with a line that always made people laugh. My family told me I wasn't funny, so now I tell jokes for a living and they're still not laughing. It wasn't bitterness, it was healing disguised as humor. A year passed and I was still no contact with them. The messages slowed, then stopped completely. The quiet didn't hurt anymore. It felt like breathing fresh air after years in a crowded room. People sometimes ask if I regret it going public, airing what they call family business. The truth, I don't. I didn't ruin my family. I just stopped protecting their version of the truth. Sometimes, though, I catch myself wondering what might have happened if they'd just shown up that night at my first show. If they'd seen me on that stage making strangers laugh. Maybe they would have understood that humor was never rebellion. It was survival. But that's not the story I got. Instead, I learned something far more valuable, that love without respect is just control dressed up as concern. That sometimes the family you're born into can't see who you are until the world reflects it back at them. Now, when people come up to me after shows, they don't talk about fame or followers. They tell me, "Your story made me feel less alone." And that's everything I ever wanted, to make people laugh, yes, but also to remind them that being left out doesn't mean you don't belong somewhere. Because sometimes the space you're denied becomes the stage you build for yourself. And me, I'm finally standing center stage where I was meant to be all along. If you've ever been underestimated, ignored, or told you didn't belong, I hope this story reminds you that you never needed their permission to shine. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been excluded by the people you love most?